So don't slack on this. Don't. This is not about entertainment. It's about entertainment. This is some serious stuff. That's all I wanted to say. I'm passing the mic.
April Fools. How y'all doing? Murray Holman on the show. I do the shake up part on the Jim Anderson show. And we're definitely going to shake it up and see what it's all about. Going up in our community. Guess what? We here live.
Absolutely. So we've had you guys on a couple times, but I kind of asked the same basic question just for our new listeners. I think H.O.M.E is a great organization, but you got to know what they are and what they do. So can one of you guys just give us a quick summary, a quick blurb of H.O.M.E? I know you guys have been around for, it was coming up 60 years?
Yeah, last year was 60.
Last year was 60 years, so
Yep.
60 plus years. So give us a quick summary of what you've been doing in those 60 years and what you're doing now for the community.
Yeah, H.O.M.E is a fair housing organization. So our goal is to make sure that everyone in Western New York is aware of their rights in housing and is able to exercise those rights. So we want to make sure that people know what their landlords can and can't do and know that they can come to us for help if their landlords aren't respecting their rights.
And that's good. Actually, last week we had a person coming on talking about a tenant problem. So I'll be asking you some questions on that later. Before we get into that, I know you guys wanted to come on the show for a specific reason. What was the goal of today's show, and what message do you guys want to get out to the air for us to go deeper into?
Yeah, April is Fair Housing Month. It's the anniversary of the passage of the Fair Housing Act. It was signed into law in April of 1968, just after Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. So really the Fair Housing Act is part of Dr. King's legacy. His assassination kind of created the necessary political will to finally get the Civil Rights Act of 1968, which the Fair Housing Act is a part of, over the finish line. It was the first time that nationwide discrimination became illegal on the basis of race, on the basis of familial status, which means having children in your household, and a number of other things. And since then, there have been more and more protections passed both at the federal level and at the state and local levels that give tenants more rights that they can exercise. And so Fair Housing Month is acknowledging that progress that has been made, but also that there is still progress that has to be made.
Okay, I think that's good, so we can all start from the same starting position when we're talking about fair housing. I'm a little younger, so 1968 is kind of hard for me to grasp. So can you guys maybe down the line or somebody different just explain why you think fair housing, the Fair Housing Act is important to you in the state of Buffalo today?
I think it's very important because it allows folks the opportunities to have access to housing where they have been historically excluded and discriminated from, but also it gives folks an opportunity to exercise their rights, to be able to assert a sense of home, to not only like with the National Fair Housing Act, but locally, as Stephen was saying, one of our protections is against lawful source of income, and a lot of the folks we work with are like Section 8 recipients. So it's providing folks an opportunity to move to neighborhoods of their choice or neighborhoods that have schools that they may want their kids to go to, or access to employment that they may have, to break those generational barriers and to help folks escape from generational poverty that has been so intersected with race and disability and other facets throughout our history.
Gotcha. So Murray, I'm gonna ask you this because every time I go to an event, Murray be there. Murray, you be in the community. You have a hand on the community. So I want to ask you, what is the current state of housing do you see on the community side in Buffalo? What is the current state? What are people saying? What are their emotions towards it? Because we've been hearing about housing on all levels in the political sphere for a while. So what is the current state on the community side in Buffalo?
Well, so what we getting in our community now is, when you talk about fair housing, pricing, price gouging. Homes now used to be $20,000, now going for $150,000 plus. People feel discriminated. Is that a form of discrimination as well on that level? I see in fair housing now, people call us up about landlords coming inside their homes, opening up the door without any notice or things like that. Those things are going on in the community constantly. Landlords is just telling you, you can't have 10 people in the house and going up on their rent. Those type of questions are coming across to our organization, Stop the Violence Coalition, and Peacemakers. We get those type of questions coming to me. So now I have something in the toolbox that I can now call you guys up and shift it your way. That's what we deal with a lot, Austin, is how do we take the resources or the people that's connecting with us and then ship it that way, then it won't be a burden on me. So it's not passing the buck, but it's getting them the right information. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the different things you said, they're definitely different areas.
Yes.
As far as pricing, that's more of an affordable housing issue than a fair housing issue. I mean, they're connected, but there aren't any laws that say this is how much you can sell a home for. It's a market, and the housing market is kind of ridiculous. It's not doing
Right.
anybody any favors, really. But unfortunately, there's nothing to prevent, rents from going up. There's no rent control in Western New York. Landlords do have to give tenants a certain amount of notice before they can increase the rent. But if they do give that notice, they're allowed to. They can raise the rent by as much as they want to. The second thing you said about landlords coming in without notice, that is illegal. So
Yes.
landlords do need to, unless there's an emergency like a burst pipe or something like that, they have to give at least 24 hours notice before they can enter. I forget what the third thing you said was.
More or less making them pay more rent because they have more tenants or family members coming into the home.
Yeah, so as far as like occupancy limits, like there are legal limits, like building code and stuff like that. But landlords can't say, oh, this is a 3-bedroom apartment, you can only have 3 people in here. Landlords can't make it more restrictive than what the building code says. They are required to prevent overcrowding, and so in most situations you can't have 10 people in a 2-bedroom. There's no easy rules. It really depends on the size of a particular house or a particular apartment. But landlords can't say, oh, you can only have X number of people in here if there is actually room for more. And in general, landlords are supposed to be charging rent for the unit, not per person or whatever who lives there.
Get ready.
And that distinction between affordable and fair housing, I think, is the issue that a lot of people, why they conceptually can't understand what organizations like you do and where you fit in. Last week, the person that we had, the tenant that was expressing their issues, they were discriminatory issues, but they were expressing they didn't really understand how nonprofits like yours fit into the spectrum, because I think that there's, like you talked about, there's work that we need to do as a community on the political side to change some of the laws around housing to protect us on the price side, but that's not really where you guys fit in per se. You guys are more on the discrimination side. So can you explain how if a tenant had a problem, you would fit into that process of getting that solution rectified?
Or representing them or having representation.
Yeah, so if somebody has an issue, they can bring it to us, whether it's I think this happened to me, or hey, this happened to me, is that legal? Those are the kinds of questions that we can answer, whether it is discrimination, if somebody is looking for a new place to live and they think that the landlord denied them because of their race, because they have children who live with them, because of a disability,
a dog,
things like that. Those are the kinds of things that we specialize in helping people with. Or if a landlord isn't making repairs that are needed or is trying to evict them illegally, we can help people with those kinds of things. We don't actually represent people in court, though, so if someone does need legal representation, we'll refer them to one of the legal aid agencies that exist around here that might be able to help them.
Okay, so it's more of, if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask, right? Like I heard one thing you said was if you think, right? So you don't have to have a case built. Just if you're curious, call, ask, set up a meeting and see how it goes. But another question I have, is there a point that you would recommend to just move out and it's not worth fighting the discrimination? I had someone last week again who said they went to court multiple times, and I know you guys don't represent in court. So as an advisor, is there a point where you just say, this is just a landlord that is just not doing right and due to the system that we have in place, it's probably just better for you to move out and try to alleviate yourself from the situation and fight it?
Well, I would say it's not necessarily like making it a sort of be all end all sort of ultimatum choice, but rather what we try to do is to ensure that folks know what their options are, what the possible outcomes may be. We may say, this is what may happen or what you may need to do should you decide to move out, and here's what may happen should you decide to fight it, or the different avenues of advocacy that either we could provide, or if you want to contact the Erie County or like file a complaint with the Erie County Fair Housing Board, whether you come through us or not, you have a right to do so, or the New York State Division of Human Rights, or through HUD. So rather, we're not going to try to coerce or like make someone, pigeonhole someone into a decision, but rather be able to help folks see, here's kind of like the roadmap or the schematic of, if you decide to fight this, to pursue this, what your possible outcomes may be. We can't necessarily guarantee anything, but also being cognizant of, should something like come in front of a judge, or, should you need to or want to file one of these claims, what is it that you may need to do on your end to ensure that you're providing all the evidence and all the details that are needed, and that's something that we could assist with.
Got you. So it's just, so you guys probably really appreciate curious calls. Hey, I'm just curious. I'm wondering about this. Like we have now, we're open on the line if you want to call in at 716-837-1112. But curious calls, right? Just call. If you think you have something that you're curious about, there's nothing wrong with calling. And I think that, like I said, for what you guys are describing, all you guys want to do is give people a fair chance to see all their options instead of feeling like they don't have any.
Where you located?
Right. Well, let me just piggyback to what you're saying. We honestly just, like you said, call, because if you don't call, you're not going to know. You're going to accept it. I know a lot of people, since coming to H.O.M.E about a year ago, really just thought that what their landlords were doing was just okay, that it's normal, and really it's not. So call us. It doesn't matter if it's big, small, or what you consider big or small. We accept all calls, and we're willing to help you as much as we can. And if we can assist with that, then we definitely want to point you in the right direction. Going to your question, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
We're located at 1542 Main Street. We're at the corner of East Ferry, literally across from Willoughby Insurance.
We're
Yeah.
throwing the plug out there.
Yeah.
That's gonna be the next spot.
But yes, you can walk in, I believe, until 1:00. We're accepting walk-ins, and then after that, you can schedule an appointment. You can call us at 716-854-1400. Or you can send us an email at info@homeny.org. Either way.
Right across the street from next to the restaurant, right?
Yes. Yep. Mm-hmm. Get some food right after you see us or before. It's fine.
Yeah. I also want to add that most of the people who we work with are tenants, but we also want to make sure that if you're a landlord who is trying to be a good landlord, we also want to make sure that you have the information you need to do that. So if you're a landlord who has questions like, hey, can I do this? Or I have this problem with a tenant, what is the legal way to resolve it? We also want to answer those questions.
What's up with the Section 8? Mostly people are on Section 8, and they feel like sometimes the rules change for them in the community. They say, well, the house might not pass inspection, but the landlord is still getting a check. I'm saying, and that tenant is in there. They feel that they shouldn't be getting this check because the place is not up to par. Do you help with those type of issues?
That specific issue, if it didn't pass inspection and then it's the agency is still paying their portion of the rent, that's an issue that the agency that administers the voucher has to deal with. That is their job. But if somebody is being treated differently by their landlord because they have a voucher,
right,
differently from other tenants that landlord may have, or if someone is denied a chance to rent because they have a voucher, whether a landlord comes out and says, hey, I don't take vouchers, or if they just suspect that that's the reason. Source of income discrimination, which that is the most common type of discrimination report that we receive. It happens all the time.
Wow.
And so we do want to make sure that if people either know for sure or believe that the reason that they didn't get a particular apartment is because the landlord didn't want to take their voucher, that's what we want people to come to us with.
So if that happens, would you want to live in a house after you got discriminated against, or you making the noise and then all of a sudden, boom, now you like, I really don't even want to live with or be involved with this landlord after case? is it some type of amount given to the person that might win the case on a discrimination?
I mean, it totally depends. I mean, every case is different. The resolutions are different. We want to make sure that we get as close to the desired outcome of the person who brings us the complaint as we can get.
Mhm.
And different people want different things, and we're able to achieve different things based on the facts of the case.
What things is different? I mean, what can you achieve? I just want to know. Just throw something out. Just throw me something out there.
I would be careful on what you can achieve because
Yes.
everything is subjective. So when we start throwing out hypotheticals,
Well,
some people will take that information. I understand that, but I think some people can take that information and they can take it as it's an absolute versus a hypothetical.
Well, that's hypothetical. Let's go there.
Yeah, so again, kind of like what Stephen was saying, it depends on what the individual may want, but sometimes it may be, I just want to find a place to live, and we have our mobility department where we will help provide listings to folks if there's like a specific like neighborhood that they may want to live in, or part of Buffalo that will provide listings specific to someone's needs. If someone wants to take legal action or feel that they may have been refused that opportunity to rent, then they can either file a complaint with the Erie County Fair Housing Board, New York State, or HUD. We can, again, provide all the assistance and advocacy we can to ensure that they do so. But as far as like any sort of like legal action, that would be more so helping possibly establish an attorney-client relationship, like Stephen said, providing like information as to who they can contact, but also even like space for like conciliation if, perhaps, and it's not to excuse it at all, but perhaps it may be an instance of a landlord maybe acting in good faith, but they're not aware of, lawful source of income being a protected class. So it's us taking the initiative. And I know one of the great things Stephen does is that he'll have landlord training classes, and it's to help ensure that we stamp out discrimination before it even happens in the first place.
Great.
And so to kind of relate what the last guest was saying, because at the time, I guess I didn't understand the context, but it is true. This has to be, you have to take initiative, right? You can't let discrimination kind of sit because it'll just keep happening.
Correct.
And so if you're living there, yes, there are organizations, but you need to take initiative not only to reach out to these organizations, but to find out what is that resolution. But what is a choice, and if you don't make a choice, you are making a choice. What is a choice is to say that I want to better my situation and to be adamant on doing that. Now, I know this isn't where you guys focus, but I do also want to hear you guys' side on this. Are there political things that are currently in the works, bills being worked on, things that we should look out for being passed that can protect us either on that discrimination or Affordable Housing Act, really just on housing as a whole? Because I understand, like we said, there's a political component to this game as well.
Yeah, there's one bill that is being considered this year in the state legislature, which is the statewide right to counsel, which would establish a legal right and a fund to make sure that people have legal representation in housing court. People believe in most situations rightly that in the United States, people have a right to an attorney. That doesn't really apply to housing court, which I personally believe is ridiculous. There are nonprofits in the area that do a good job of making sure that people can have some kind of legal representation, but that's really kind of a stopgap measure. And if right to counsel was passed, it would make sure that everybody is able to be represented in housing court, which would increase the chances that people are successful in defending themselves and being able to stay in their homes. There's also another bill that was being considered last year. I'm not sure if it's being considered again this year. It was not passed, but it was called good cause eviction, which would require landlords to have a reason for deciding to stop renting to a tenant. Because as it stands, landlords can decide to not renew someone's lease or not renew someone's month-to-month agreement without giving them a reason for it. They can just choose, I don't want to rent to this person anymore. They do have to give them a certain amount of notice, which depends on how long the person's lived there. But if they give them that notice, there's nothing anybody can do about
30
it.
days, or is it 30 days?
It's minimum of 30 days.
Okay.
If someone's lived there more than 1 year, it's 60. And if someone's lived in the same place more than 2 years, it's 90 days.
90 days.
But regardless, somebody, even if they've lived there for 15 years, can be told with 3 months notice, you have to leave. And there's nothing they can do about it, even if they've been the perfect tenant for 15 years. But good cause eviction, if it was passed, would change that. And a landlord would have a certain list of reasons that were legitimate reasons for them to ask a tenant to leave. It also would have capped rent raises at, I believe it was 5%
It's the boss
per year.
The numbers. Yes.
So that would definitely help. If it was passed, it would help prevent rent from getting completely out of control. Mm-hmm. Landlords could still raise it to basically match the rate of inflation, but they couldn't just raise it any amount they wanted, and they would have to have a legitimate reason to force people to move.
I would say, though I think it's pretty cool, I don't think I would recommend representing yourself in court. So I think that's definitely something that we need to look at getting past, and that's more on the people community side. I think that we really need to get active. We really need to be adamant and understand, vote local, make decisions so that we can impact and get bills like this passed. Because when I hear affordable housing, 5% limit would have been probably great to some people. Having protections over you just suddenly losing your house would be great for some people. These are things that we want. But when they're written up and there's an option to get them, we don't show up to the polls. Right. And so I think that it really needs to be not only an organization, and I think you guys do a good job of that, not only being an organization that talks about what you can do now, but what steps we need to be doing as a people and as a community to get these things done, the conversations we need to be having so that we can have and make these changes be on the forefront, because that definitely is some things that I already thought that there would already be some type of protection in place, but I guess you don't think about them until you need them. So majority of Buffalo rents, correct?
Oh, yeah. So the question is basically what he just was talking about, Austin talking about. Do you guys do forums like at the Meriwether Library, booking that to tell the community about, discriminations and your organization on those levels? It's always available. And being that you're right down the street from the Meriwether Library, it would be great to have you guys there. Even Stop Violence Coalition, we actually have the place from every Friday from 4 to 5:45. We will yield our time to you guys if you want to do it like in a month or so or 3 weeks to come there to talk about your organization and to give information out to the community about home and things that's going on there. That's the key part. Also, we have major events getting ready to take place in the city of Buffalo because it's warming up. To be at those events and to get the information out, the correct information out about fair housing and things like that there. So we're willing to do that. We can talk offline, get you guys there. Our base, our WFO people that are listening will come out and really come and talk to you one-on-one.
That would be great. I know Stephen and I, we do that kind of stuff. So we can definitely take you up on that. I know on the 23rd of this month, we are having a Zoom tenants right workshop. More information and a flyer will be coming out if you want to follow us on our Facebook page. So we will be educating tenants on their rights and their responsibilities and just letting them know the ins and outs of under the fair housing law.
What's the page? You just said you got to give me.
I'm sorry. It is H.O.M.E on Facebook. If you can follow us. Right. Again, we're having a tenants rights workshop on Zoom. I believe we're talking about giving away a gift card for those who participate and register. So be on the lookout for that flyer. And going into what you said about events in the summer, we are going to be at different events such as Juneteenth, Pride, the University United Festival, things like that. So feel free to come up during that time and speak to us as well. And Stephen is also available at the Belmont Central. Yeah, I'm pushing him out. He's also available at the Belmont Central office every second and fourth Wednesday from 10 to 12.
Is that connected with, say Belmont? Is that a state agency or?
They're one of the agencies that administers Section 8 vouchers.
Yeah. So he's available there for those who want to just stop by and speak to him if you can't make it to our office.
So you guys are kind of young. Austin talked about the birth time there. You guys are young. How do you feel about doing this stuff here? That's the question I'm asking right now.
Honestly, I feel great about it. To be quite transparent, I've been a stay-at-home mom for the past 6 years. So I wanted to return to a job that serves some purpose in the community. So I'm actually really looking forward to what I've learned in home and what I'm going to continue to learn. It's actually been an eye opener for me, and I love the purpose, the mission statement of it all.
Yeah, and I personally don't have any kids, but I think that it's important for all of us to try to make the world a better place and leave the world a better place than we found it. And to me, doing this work, it's meaningful to me, and I think also my job fits well with what I'm good at. And I really I enjoy it. I genuinely enjoy it, and I also find meaning in, working towards chipping away at progress. It doesn't come easy, and there's still a long way to go as far as making sure that everybody is treated equally and has the opportunity to live life to the fullest. But what little I can do, I want to do.
And I think for me, I've been with H.O.M.E now for 6 months, and what I tell folks is that it's the kind of job where you can go to bed each night saying that you've at least helped someone in your community. And for me, it's just like, it's my heart, it's my love for others, and love for interacting and assisting others that keeps driving me. And I think it's you never know what you're going to get on a day-to-day basis, but it's also you're educating folks, you're being someone that can listen and guide through them. One of the things that I've come to realize is that it's, even though we're doing fantastic work here as an agency, it's a collective responsibility for all of us to address housing discrimination. And it's kind of the mentality of, if we're able to guide and assist someone, then they can impart that knowledge possibly onto someone else, or share it through the grapevine or with their circle, to ensure that we're working together to make a more just Buffalo, more just Western New York, where everyone has the right and opportunity to live where they so choose.
Absolutely. I think that as a young person myself, I think that it's great to see young people making and putting up a stand against what most of I've seen in history, people just kind of accepted. It's gotten to a point where if we don't have certain conversations, inflation and things are rising to the point where it's going to become unlivable. But I'm glad that at least I'm a part of a generation where we've decided that unlivable doesn't have to be a reality, and that we can actually make a livable world that we all enjoy being a part of, a reality for all of us if we're willing to do the work. So we're going to go into a commercial break, and we'll be right back. Stay with us. Bye.
All right. Y'all all right?
You guys are still live, so
Is there any questions or areas you guys particularly want to go? I know you guys come on so frequently that we kind of go and talk about the awareness piece, and then we kind of run to a wall. We don't even have to do, we can do 30 and 30 if you want. We can stop here. It's up to you guys. If you guys want to do more, if you guys want to stay, maybe just have open phone lines, talk about other things. We have a bunch of options, but I don't necessarily want to keep throwing questions that we've already answered. And I know I'm out of questions. So
we've hit on the Fair Housing Month stuff, which is the most important, talking about the tenant training and making sure that people know how to reach us and know how to access information about their rights.
The toolkit?
We didn't talk about
the toolkit. We're releasing a rental search toolkit to help people document things that happen as they go through their housing search process. So we do want to bring that up.
Yeah, we can bring that up.
We didn't talk about landlords, more or less. They get fines a lot for, how housing code. You don't deal with that either, right?
That's the cities.
So what's the connection with, because I keep hearing them saying county. So the city doesn't have any programs like this, basically?
So we do work with the city to help enforce this.
Sorry, we were kind of talking on the break, but we were coming right back. We actually, before we get into the second half, we do have a call. So caller, you were on the air. Good morning.
I wanted to ask you, Jeff, from H.O.M.E, if they publish their meetings and notices in the Criterion and the Challenger newspaper. We have an events page. That's what I wanted to know. I write for the Criterion newspaper.
we need to know how to get
Okay.
in touch with the criteria.
Because I think people need to have as many avenues as possible to get this information. And finally, is Mr. Holman still there?
Yes, ma'am. How you doing, Mother Doyle?
I'm doing fine. Mr. Holman, could you give me a call? I listened to the young people's radio show on Sunday.
Yes,
And I want
lifesavers.
to make a donation to their show
Yes, ma'am.
to help keep them on the air.
Yes, ma'am.
So you can contact me through the Buffalo Criterion newspaper. Just call the Criterion and they will give you my number. I want to make a donation to them.
I'll come by the house, Mother. I'll stop by the house and check on you. Might have to cut the grass or something for you in a minute, but I'll definitely come through, Mother.
Call me first.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'll tell you a good time to come. Okay?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes. Mother Doyle, very known in this community, well known in this community. What she said was so true with the Criterion and the Challenger as well, getting the information out in the community. Don't take the small ad, get the big ad so people can see it. And now they can have more of a buy-in. If it's small, I'm going to flip the page and I see it. So invest in that way. I know you probably have resources to do that. And so we can get the information out in the community.
Honestly, that's a great idea. So I definitely will take Mother Doyle up on that. And I appreciate her calling in and suggesting that, because that really is a great idea.
In the break, we had mentioned something that you guys were working on and releasing. If you guys want to maybe expand on that, I think it was called the Toolkit.
Yes, so we are currently formulating and soon to be releasing a renter's toolkit. And it's to assist folks that are attempting to rent housing so that they understand what their rights are, what is it that they can do to possibly avoid being scammed, what is it that discrimination may look like, and also best practices and ways to not only document it, but also to write down and catalog your own experience as well. And to an extent, it's kind of in essence is how I mentioned before the break of not only empowering folks to know what their rights are as renters, but also to work together and collaboratively in addressing housing discrimination.
So what would is that like an online thing that they'll be using, like an online thing, a toolkit? What do you mean by toolkit? I'm sorry, I'm not really.
So we're hoping to make it available both in print and online. So we're working on finalizing the plans for how to get it to people, but it's going to be a way that people can document what happens when they go through the rental search process. So they can keep track of the addresses, the contact information of landlords or property managers who they've talked to or contacted, like different walkthroughs that they might have done. And then also they can document their interactions with those people in case discrimination does happen to them. Sometimes it's hard to remember if you go somewhere and something seemed off and you're like, why did that seem off? But you can't really remember enough details to feel like you might be able to do something about that. But if you are documenting throughout the whole process, everything that happens, the things that are said, then you might be able to piece things together better and think, okay, yeah, that definitely was off. I should contact H.O.M.E because I think I experienced discrimination.
Got you. So it's a way to stay more organized when you're going through that process of finding where you're going to rent. That definitely makes sense. Do you think that there's a need? I know organization for a lot of people, like you said, it's hard to kind of piece things together, and then we're kind of playing catch up because, like you see on the political side, I think it's a lot of people just in our mind, we don't think about discrimination until it happens. And so do you think that in the community that's a useful tool to help people stay organized, that they can have a chance to fight these cases with some strength and actually have facts rather than feelings and memories?
Absolutely. You guys, the AI crew here, everything is based on computers and pulling out information. So I believe that tool that you coming up with will assist them in that. And that's great to have out there. Every little bit helps. We talk about this a lot with our organizations, resources and how we get it, and then we never use it. So I believe that this organization here of young folks in the community, probably some OGs probably put it together, but you guys, they understand that in order for us to work, we have to have the new generation come out and be successful in this thing. And I'm just looking forward to seeing it on the website and all that there and look and see how we can push this out more affected in our community.
And speaking of support, like you said, and resources, are there any things coming up, important dates? I know you had mentioned you have something come up on the 23rd, but are there any other important dates or ways that people that are listening can support, or maybe just reiterate the ways to contact you guys so people can be clear?
Yeah, so the 23rd is that tenant training on Zoom. And if people aren't able to attend the live Zoom webinar, we are going to have it recorded and on demand so that people will be able to access that information on their own time going forward. We also have a similar thing for landlords the week before that on the 17th. So both tenants and landlords will have opportunities to access that information about what the law says about how a landlord-tenant relationship is supposed to go, basically. So those are kind of the two primary events that we're doing for Fair Housing Month, is that tenant training and the landlord training. We have other events. Me and Sierra are going to be out doing different resource fairs and stuff throughout April and beyond, really. And like Sierra said, we'll also be at things over the summer, like the Juneteenth Festival. So just trying to make sure that people in the community are aware of us and know that they can come to us with those housing issues.
Do you guys rent? You rent or own homes?
Oh, I own my house.
I also own my house.
I rent.
Are you, can I, because I get yelled at for not being on a mic, can you just turn it this way real quick? For those two events that you're having, thinking about the population that you're serving, are you going to stream your Zoom on YouTube or Facebook?
Facebook, yes, I can definitely do that. I can also do it
Facebook.
on YouTube. Yeah,
I would just suggest that. And then even for your toolkit, there's applications now that are more like those enter information and respond. So like a portal, I think is probably more helpful again for the audience that you help, because a hard copy, who's going to know where the paperwork is? So certain demographics, I know in the work that I've done, even having like ID and things of those nature, people don't have it. So if you have a portal that they can upload and just get stuff approved as they're going through those processes, I think it would help them as well.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
That's that AI, right?
Yeah.
AI.
Also,
I am not artificial intelligence. I am real. Do you see me here? This is me.
I'm sorry. I also forgot to mention we are in the process of having in June partnership with the Johnny B. Wiley. We're going to have a health fair. It's going to be dozens of agencies there that are going to be available on site, just to educate the public about the services and resources available to them. I will also be posting that flyer in the criteria and the challenger so that people can know, as well as on our social media platforms. So just please be on the lookout for that.
And for all of this stuff, if people want to know what's going on, especially for Fair Housing Month, they can go to our website, which is homeny.org. This morning I put up a splash page about Fair Housing Month so people can easily access the calendar of events. They can also register for those workshops, tenants or landlords. We're also doing a book discussion on The Color of Law by Richard Rothstein, which is about the history of segregation and how the government really created the segregated landscape that we see today, not only in Buffalo, but in cities across the country. So we're doing that in conjunction with BlackRock Books and the UB Law School's Civil Rights and Transparency Clinic. So that's going to be on April 25. So information about that, about those trainings, about all the other Fair Housing Month events is going to be easiest for people to go to straight to our website, homeny.org, to access information about those.
Great.
Sounds good. Yeah. Well, if you want to call in, you can call in at 716-837-1112. I know personally, I'm very familiar with the organization. Like I come through, I chill sometimes. So I don't have necessarily too many more questions for you guys, but I know this is an important issue. I know that there are people in the community who need to ask questions. I think sometimes we hear people talking and we feel like, oh, my problem's too small or it doesn't matter. But I think that I really want that to be clear, that this is something that we need to talk about, because when one person speaks and two people speak, you create a culture and a community where these discriminations aren't okay. They're not just things that happen. We can just let go and let slide. So I think that is very important. I'm not joking. Please call in at 716-837-1112 because we need to hear your voice in order to make this change that we want to see.
Yeah, and what you said about making sure that people know that your problem isn't too small. The National Fair Housing Alliance estimates that about 90% of the housing discrimination that occurs nationwide goes unreported. So if you think that you experienced discrimination, there is a good chance that it happened. It doesn't mean that you're 100% right all the time, but we would rather have people report it to us and let us look into it and find out that, okay, there's not evidence that discrimination occurred. And have that happen more often in order to catch more instances where it does happen, than have people experience discrimination and not do anything about it. We've had an increase in the number of discrimination reports that we've received over the past couple of years. 2022 was at the time the second most discrimination reports we received in 1 year in our 60-year history. Last year was the most. I'd like to think that
part of COVID or was
I think there's a number of reasons. I think one of them is definitely that things have gotten worse. I think people in recent years, the trend of people being less comfortable openly discriminating has reversed recently. I think that's one part of it. I think conditions actually are worse than they were before. I also hope, at least, that some of it is due to our outreach and making sure that people know that they can come to us with discrimination cases. So I'm hoping that it's not just an increase in actual discrimination, but is also more of those cases of discrimination getting reported to us. But we've also been able to increase the number of staff members that we have dealing with discrimination cases so that we are able to handle more. And so I think all of those things play into
so
it.
And here's a question for you. The data that you've been collecting, is it more in one certain area of the city or the county? Is, how we are at that there? Are you just basically dealing with the city issue or the county issue in certain areas?
So we do serve all of Western New York, not only Erie County, but all of the surrounding counties as well. That being said, most of our clients are from Buffalo, including the discrimination cases. Definitely the majority of the discrimination cases we get are from the city of Buffalo. I'm not sure exactly about the zip code breakdown exactly. We more keep track of the types of discrimination, so based on race, based on disability, that kind of thing, more than the exact zip code where it happens. But it definitely is most prevalent in the city of Buffalo.
Absolutely. So that means someone is getting information out to the right people. This keeps you in working and making sure that things go in the right direction. If not, then your numbers would definitely be low. And then we have to go out there and then come on shows like the Jimmy Anderson show and talk about it and get more people to respond and be respectful to what's going on. I'm a landlord, used to rent homes and all that there. And some of those issues is right on point. As a young person, like Austin's age, sometimes they, like he said, we'll just walk away instead of just going through all that there, right? Austin, you said that earlier. I guess it's easier to walk away for a young person opposed to an elderly person that can't walk away, that has established a home with more stuff than a young person. So you want to elaborate on that a little bit as a young person walking away?
Well, yeah. So since I'm 04, so 08 was when it was apparently everything was going on. I was 4 years old. So I really wasn't worried about a house at the time. But for most of my years that I've been conscious or even looking at like moving out as something I'm even talking about realistically, rather than like a dream, it's not sounded good. It's always not sounded great. Even when we think about like discrimination, especially age discrimination. I'm young. You think I'm going to tear the place up? I can't. That's why we can't rent from hotels because it's the association that if I'm younger, I'm not going to have the responsibility to do certain things. So it kind of puts you in a box where if the only option is nothing, something is better than nothing. Right. So it puts you in kind of a survival mindset. I think that's the importance of organizations like H.O.M.E and these conversations, these platforms like WUFO to talk about that there are other alternatives, because myself, I just know that if I'm given an option that looks too difficult, myself and a lot of my friends would just walk away. Right. Because they have, this didn't work out how I wanted to. Okay, it's not worth it. And so I think that it's just important, like I was talking about earlier, if we want to make a change, walking away is making a choice. Because if you're not saying anything, then you're letting someone getting away with it. So I think that it's just the knowledge and the awareness, especially when we think about older generations that maybe weren't as focused on changing it. Wiser generation that weren't as focused on changing it. Wiser generation. They weren't maybe directing us to go to home. They were just saying, you know, this is just how it is. So I think it's just got to be a change of mindset that we're kind of both hitting at the same time. But young people, like you said, because we assume we got so many more years, it's like, I'll just go figure something else out. And so it's got to be a collaborative, just like the organization, with wiser people and with younger people to help make that change, to bridge that gap, that there is a better way, because that's the mindset we really have to get to.
Right.
And like you said, it's about being able to make choices. And one of the things that we want to do is make sure that people have all of the information available to them and know what those choices are and empower them to choose for themselves which path they want to take. Because two people might be dealing with a similar situation, and one of them might want to push through and live in this particular place, even though the landlord has shown that they might be willing to discriminate against them. But they're willing to put up with that because they want to live here. Whereas somebody else might say, I don't want to deal with that landlord, even though I like this house, I'm just going to go look somewhere else. And even though the situations might be similar, people are different from each other, and different people might want to make different decisions. So we don't want to tell people this is what you should do. We want to say, these are your options. Which pathway do you want to take?
I have a question. Can I see this thing? I have actually a couple of questions. Well, that's because we're sitting here. So the question I have is, so for example, I'm looking to hire someone right now for my company, and I'm looking at these resumes and I'm like, look, you done had 20 jobs in 5 years. So no, I'm not taking a chance on you. And I think sometimes with younger people or people in general, they say it's discriminatory, but if a landlord is asking for references where you've lived over the last 2 years or 5 years and you've got 10 houses, like, right, because that's a risk. So I think in your classes, are you educating these people? And I'm not going to say young people, because I think it's a mindset. Like, I know right now people still have tax money, I think tax rich. So they leave an apartment with all this stuff and they just try to establish something new. So that's one question. The other thing is, are there portals? So for example, I know with some things you can look and see, they're like landlord portals where they can look at renter history. Because my daughter went to rent an apartment in Pittsburgh and they were able to pull stuff and find out, like,
look on her Facebook
past
page,
history, right? Like where has she been or where has she been looking? So I think those are some important things to share. We got a call, so let me stop talking. Go ahead and bring the call in.
Good morning.
What's up, brother Kamal?
Yeah, good. My question is the responsibilities or liabilities between the home or property owner or property manager.
Yeah.
What level of ability or responsibility do they have? Is it property owners and or property managers?
I mean, there are a lot of responsibilities that landlords do have, and that's what our landlord training webinar is about, making sure that landlords know those responsibilities. Part of it is knowing what information they can and can't consider when they're screening tenants. And that actually goes with your question, because they can consider rental history. They can ask for references of prior landlords, and they can consider that when they're deciding who to rent to. They can't consider things like race or age or disability, things like that. That's discrimination, but they can consider that rental history. They're allowed to do things like background checks and credit checks. I always discourage landlords from using just a credit score, because paying rent doesn't necessarily help your credit score. And sometimes people might have bad credit because they have prioritized paying rent over prioritizing like credit card bills or something else that negatively impacts their credit score. But it is legal for landlords to do credit reports and take that information into consideration when they're screening.
Landlord is the property owner or the property manager, the landlord?
Well, the property manager is usually working on behalf of the landlord, and so the owner of the property is can be liable depending on whether or not, if the property manager does something illegal that is against what the property owner told them to do, then it's on the property manager. But if the property manager is doing their job as doing their job in the way that the property owner wants
As the
them to,
agent,
and
yes.
and breaks the law in that way, then the property owner can be liable also.
So when I think Brother Kamal is basically talking about high rise. When you have a bunch of tenants, now you have these cases coming down or discrimination or whatever it might be. There, it's different because now you're dealing with a corporation. It's harder to go ahead and go after these corporations when you have a property manager that might be discriminating on the person just because they don't like them. You know what I'm saying? But then it goes down the line and it just gets thrown out or dragged out. And I think that's what this question is basically about there. You deal with that on high levels, especially on the east side of Buffalo, when you have housing up, high rises, a lot of high rises, low income people living there in those high rises, but go through these things, tenant issues and things like that there.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely tough to determine whether a property manager is acting on their own or acting that way because that is the policy of the organization. But like I said, if it is the policy of the organization, then the organization is liable for the property manager's action. If the property manager is just going off and doing their own thing that is against what their job description says they're supposed to be doing, then it's just on them personally.
And I think we do have a caller. Good morning, caller. Carly, you're on the air.
Yes, hello. Good morning, everyone. I just had a comment I want to make on the last guest that spoke, speaking how she would look at an individual's resume and have some sort of bias towards them having multiple jobs. I would suggest that person understand that the era of being at one employment or employer is over, and it's been over for about 40 years now. That the norm for people to have multiple, that's the norm now, for people to have multiple jobs listed on their resume, because that particular type of employment is more of the norm. As we've known, globalization has taken a role, as well as a lot of corporations shutting down and downsizing, and also, the lack of benefits and also the low wages that it takes for a person to have multiple jobs in order to be able to sustain any type of even working for a living standard. And the other thing is that 2 or 3 years, maybe a maximum of 5, is the norm, because the era in the time of retiring at one job, after 25 years, that time era has come and gone. So I would suggest that they update themselves on the employment trends and not be so biased against someone because they have multiple jobs on their resume.
And so I can respond to that. Yeah, I can respond to that because we're about to end in a moment. So when I was looking at the resumes, to be specific in the response to that is that if you've had multiple jobs and your jobs haven't, I wasn't saying 2 years or 3 years. The resumes that I was looking at for this particular role were, it's an administrative assistant position, and you've had jobs for 2 months, 3 months. It hasn't been 2 years. And then the second piece is that when you're applying for a job and you look at what the description is for the position and you have a role, all your roles don't align with that, and it just doesn't make sense, then yes, I'm open to having a conversation, because someone could be in school and so they did retail and then they're pursuing a degree and it's in something else, and I'll be open to that conversation. But if someone's had 10 or 15 jobs and the majority of those jobs have been less than 6 months, that's the things that I'm considered. And I don't think that that's a bias, but it is a choice because it's a competency misalignment, and there is that stability that we will be looking for. But thank you for your call.
And as a young person, I definitely understand what it's like to have multiple jobs, but I'm a little into semantics. I think it's nothing wrong with having multiple jobs, but to survive, it's not about having multiple jobs, it's about working multiple jobs. So if you're not working at a job for a long period of time, you're just jumping job to job. I'm not going to speak on your pockets, but I feel like you're probably not saving too much because I'm young. I know people who do it. So it's about working a job and putting in time in a job that I think organizations, and similarly on the landlord side, there comes a certain level of I have to make a decision that I know is going to be right. If I bring in a tenant that I know I'm going to have problems with, am I doing anybody a service? Right. And so we kind of have to use our discretion because certain landlords might be better for certain tenants and vice versa. And so we kind of just have to be considerate to, like she said, different people's choices. And sometimes what we may believe is bias is only biased because it's subjective. Right. So it's biased to us. But sometimes our feelings don't always necessarily negate the facts or what's written in law. So
because landlords, just like employers, they don't want to have to go through this whole screening process over and over and over and over again.
But a landlord doesn't have the right.
It's expensive and time consuming. And so landlords and employers both ideally want to find somebody who is going to do the thing they're looking for well, whether that's doing a job or whether that's being a tenant. And they want them to continue doing that for as long as possible.
A landlord doesn't have the right to go into your Facebook accounts and all that there to look and see if you're going to be a great tenant. And that's it's rules out there for this that you can't do that. It's different from going from employment opposed to I'm renting a house. So now you taking that and you being biased to who I am because you're looking at my page, you see me holding up blunts or whatever there. Now I gotta bring you up in there. So that landlords don't have that power to do that, to impede to everyone's right. Now I think we less than a minute away before we get off the Jim Anderson show. But I'm glad you guys are here and I'm glad you stayed in the fire. And that's what it's about here on the Jim Anderson show. We get it right. And I'm glad Mother stepped up and said, give her the microphone. But this is what the Jim Anderson show is about. And WFO, people, you listening in, we look forward to seeing you next week on the show. And then as we go back to Austin, the young man that one day hopefully will own his home so he don't have to rent. We're going to go in that direction.
We're going to definitely figure it out. Y'all stay safe. I'd like to give you our last word, but we're kind of on crunch time. So we'll get you guys back. We know you'll be back again. Thank you for joining in next week, 716-837-1112. Thank you, Buffalo. Peace out.
Peace.
That was a great response.